golden rule, as people say it, is treat people as you want to be treated. But we need to throw the golden rule away and go for the platinum rule, which is treat people as they want to be treated. And that means understanding someone's lived experience, understanding someone's culture. You see their colour, you see their race, you see their faith, you see their sexuality, and you celebrate them because of that, because you know that they are authentic, enriched and capable people. And you don't force them to hide those characteristics.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Anushka at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for SCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives more than 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Joanne Lockwood. Joanne is a diversity, inclusion, and belonging specialist who engages with organizations to develop policy and best practices to be more inclusive for all people. Working with leadership teams and challenging biases, she helps to develop a vision and strategy for conscious inclusion with the aim of bringing about positive cultural change, employee experience, and promoting good mental health. Additionally, she also promotes transgender awareness and support to businesses and organizations throughout the UK, Europe, and elsewhere, developing allies program as assisting in policy and the LGBTQI inclusion strategies. As a sought-after keynote conference speaker, podcaster, blogger, and panelist, she delivers workshops, seminars, and training programs throughout the UK, Europe, and elsewhere on all topics of cultural change, employee engagement, and experience. We're so happy and honored to have someone of her stature today on our interview series. Welcome, Joanne. We're thrilled to be talking to you today.
Oh, it's an absolute honour to be invited. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise, the pleasure is absolutely ours. So diving right deep into the interview, Joanne, the first question I really had for you was, you've been working as a diversity and inclusion advisor and consultant at See Change Happen for the past 4 years now. And you've had tremendous success as well. So would you like to share how your journey has been like for our viewers?
Yeah, sure. It may look like tremendous success, but there's a lot of activity going on under the covers. So I give you a bit of background. I sold my IT company. I ran an IT company for 25 years. So that was my life. A small business IT. So I used to support computers and networks and systems for people until about 4 and a bit years ago, at which point I sold my business. And I also gender transitioned at the same point, which either one of those things is quite a daunting task, but to do them at the same time. And I was looking for a new career. I decided that I was kind of frustrated and tired of IT and support, having done it for so long. And of course, my own particular needs, my own frustrations around inclusion, exclusion, about my being trans, if you like, sparked me into this orbit of wanting to create a better world, not just for me, but for everybody. And I soon realized that it wasn't just about me, it was about all people. And I felt that by working to solve the problems for all people, it would benefit me as well, rather than just focusing on me. So which is why I've really expanded after our conversations with meeting people, learning about the D&I space, about employee engagement, about the challenges people face. That I settled on the inclusion and belonging as my core sort of topic, and that's how I describe myself, as an inclusion and belonging specialist. Because I really believe that by creating that sense of belonging through great culture, through great values in an organization, then the people who work within that organization can thrive. They become self-actuated, they become more empowered, they deliver better solutions, and all these great things that we know about D&I. Yet many businesses don't leverage that. So that became my focus. And I've also spent a lot of time working with talent acquisition teams across the world. So I spoke on stage for companies in San Francisco, Melbourne, across Europe, Asia, and around the UK. And a lot of that's been within talent acquisition. Some of it's been within the HR or the learning and development space. But yeah, very receptive. Black Lives Matter this year, that's last year now, isn't it? We're in 2021, kicked a lot of organizations out of their complacency, they thought, oh, we were doing enough. But I think that really highlighted the inadequacy of many of the things that were going on. And I think the impact of COVID, which we'll talk about, I know we'll talk about more in a minute, is that employee well-being and the employee experience and being very person-centric came to the forefront, and people woke up to this. So yeah, I mean, it looks like I've been very successful over 4 years, but the momentum really has grown over that 4 year period through lots of networking, hard work, meeting people. One of the things I always say to people is that when we're doing training is look at your circle of friends, look at your network. If you're living in a very monoculture yourself, without having lots of diversity in your own environment, then you're limiting your lived experience. So I just invested a lot of time meeting people from different cultures. And when I say cultures, I don't just mean geographic or religious or faith cultures. I also talk about the disability space, the LGBT space, the gender space, because each of those particular groups and has their own culture, their own language, their own terminology. So we have to immerse ourselves and generate cultural intelligence around all different sorts of people and backgrounds and intersections. And that's kind of how I've built my business, by enriching my own lived experience through the contacts and networks I've built.
That's great. That's wonderful work, Joanne. And congratulations on the, I mean, you've had phenomenal experience, and it's just so heartening to listen to you today. And I'm sure you're a motivation and an inspiration for so many people out there, including me. And I completely agree with you on the fact that diversity is really the need of the hour. And just being exposed to multiple perspectives and just fostering inclusivity, especially with remote work, virtual inclusivity, that is really imperative. So can't second you more on that.
Thank you.
So going on to the next question, Joanne, you've previously spoken about bringing in a positive cultural change within an organization. So I really want to ask you, in a pandemic-ridden world with newly emerging cultures that will shape only with time and that are constantly evolving, like, what would you suggest be the right approach for leaders towards creating newer and positive cultures within the workspace?
I think first of all, whilst culture is evolved through the teams, you can't invent a culture and say, right, this is now us. It has to evolve. And I think leaders need to take a long, hard look at the way they're influencing that culture, the tone they set. And often, I've experienced it myself. Often you look around your table and think, well, we're okay. Yeah, we've got a great culture. We have great fun. We talk to each other. But the experience of people beneath you at different levels is often vastly different to the level you're at. So I think you've really got to take a long, hard look at the way your direct reports, their direct reports, and the people on the shop floor or whatever experience the organization. And you can only do that through engagement surveys and talking to people. And I would suggest going out there almost believing that you need to do more. Well, actually, you should believe you need to do more, because you're never going to get it perfect. No matter how great your organization is. And we can think of some global companies, some big companies. You think, oh, I'd love to work for them. They sound like a fantastic place. But they still have their own challenges. They still have their own pockets of discrimination, because those big companies still lose staff. Staff move on because they're not happy, because they want promotion. So nobody's perfect. So I think that's the first thing for leaders to admit, is we're not perfect. I think the other thing that leaders should do is be authentic and say, we know we haven't been good enough in the past. We saw this with Black Lives Matter. There's some very bland, inauthentic statements put out initially, and people were calling them out. Past employees, current employees are saying, no, that's not the organization I work for. Actually, there's still problems here. So I think it's better and more authentic to put out a statement that says, we know we haven't done, we know we're not perfect. We could have done better in the past, and we're now committed to making change, and then live up to that commitment. So I think that also sets a tone to the customers, stakeholders, but also signpost the staff and teams that this organization is there. Then that's the time to involve your staff networks, your resource groups, and talk to people and say, what is your lived experience? How is it for you as a Black person, as a gay person, or as a Black gay person? How does it feel working in our organization? Because I think one of the mistakes that companies make is when they're doing employee engagement, they often come up with the big numbers, but they don't know who says. So unless you can drill down with people science and heat maps and says, well, who says? Otherwise, you've just got a number. 85% of people are happy and 15% of people aren't happy. Who are the 15%? Who are the 85%? So I want to know, is it the white men that are happy and the black women are not happy? Because unless you have that granularity, and the biggest barrier to that is trust. Organizations say, well, people don't tick the boxes. They don't fill in the demographic questions. And my reaction is because they don't trust you. So how do you build trust? How do you get people to want to complete the surveys? And again, this is down to communication. This is about talking to people. Use your staff networks. Actually go out and meet people and say, look, we're trying to produce this stat. We know we're not doing great. We want to find out what you really think, and we want to drive improvement. And then through that, you evidence the fact you are making change in a positive way, and then people will start to trust you. But if you keep asking people what they think and nothing ever changes, they think, well, why am I bothering? It's not, people get survey fatigue, they get lack of action fatigue. And that's what we need to do here. We need to make sure we focus on actually asking, you said, and we did. Because as a customer, if you keep buying from somebody who lets you down, and you say, you're letting me down, eventually the customer will walk away. And it's no different to employees, to staff, to teams, or even candidates in the recruitment process. Candidates in the recruitment process are also potential customers, or they could work for somebody who's a potential customer. So we've got to think about the candidate experience, the employee experience, as if they're customers, as they're a valuable asset. They're a captive audience. They've got huge amounts of insight and feedback of the real life situation in organizations. And I think too often, leadership is scared to ask. They don't want to open that box. They're worried what the answers are going to be. They don't want to be complacent, or they just don't have the tools in the toolbox to know where to start. They're scared of getting it wrong. And this is how leaders need to evolve themselves, to be vulnerable, to show we don't know everything. We need your help to figure this one out together, and then start that journey. Then what the organization can do is let its culture evolve. Because you've pushed the boat out into the water, and the crew can take over and steer it and let that culture evolve. And the leadership just needs to then make sure that it amplifies and supports the culture that's evolving, and make sure that acceptable language is maintained. It's aligned with the vision and values of where the organization is trying to achieve. So there's no easy tick box. You can't download a D&I vision document and say, there we are, that's our strategy. Because you have to own it. I often see organizations who have this great D&I playbook, but it's a dusty PDF on a digital shelf. You need to take this dusty PDF, blow on it, wave it around, and own it. So everybody in the organization should know what the values are. Everyone in the organization should know what the organization is trying to achieve. Everybody should be able to have a conversation about anti-racism. Everyone should have a conversation about anti-homophobic or anti-sexism. If you can't have a conversation, then you don't own the playbook. So you need to have a corporate why of D&I, and each person in that organization has to understand their own personal why of D&I and how that aligns with the corporate culture and the corporate vision. Because doing the right thing, yes, we know it's the right thing, but that isn't enough. We have to have a sustainability of purpose, and that we all share, that survives employee changes, leadership changes, that is still pervasive within an organization, regardless of who's at the helm. We can still drive these things through. And of course, we have to revisit it. We can't just, again, assume we've got our strategy and we're going to follow that for the next 20 years. We've got to keep looking at it every year. Everything changes. COVID happened. Black Lives Matter happened. We've got the Me Too movement and the sexism. There's going to be more and more challenges coming out of the world as we go forward. So you've got to be ready to be agile and adapt. But keep asking people what their challenges are. How can we help? How can we make your employee experience the best it can be? What am I doing to make your daily life the best it can be? Because if I'm not giving you the right tools in terms of IT systems, you've got a right to complain. But if I'm not giving you the right tools in terms of management, leadership support, then again, I can't complain. So it's aligning all the tools to make sure an employee or a team can succeed. And making sure that the team does gel and that inclusion and belonging really exists.
That was so well elaborated by you, Joanne. Such an exhaustive answer and very well encapsulated. Thank you so much for that. And I completely agree with you and love the part where you said that we need to get into the nitty gritty of the issue and step into the other person's shoes and respond to each one's subjectivities while tackling a situation and fostering inclusivity. And can't agree with you more on that. So thank you so much for that enlightening response, Joanne. Going on to the next question, in light of the pandemic, do you see any trends that are really evolving within employee engagement? And do you think employee engagement is changing drastically in the years to come?
Yeah, I could speak from a UK perspective or maybe a Western European, or North American, Australian perspective. I can't speak about other significantly different cultures, but I know one of the challenges with COVID is certainly the UK home education with children, additional responsibilities that people have in a lockdown or restricted home life. The challenges you also have with multiple generations potentially competing for IT resources at home, broadband connections, desks, chairs. So you've got maybe partner one works for one company, partner two works for another company, then they've got child 1, 2, 3 at different ages, all require different schooling. They need to be looked after, they need to be motivated to get on with stuff, and you need to be the referee to sort out the bickering and getting people on with it. So there's a huge amount of challenges. So I think organizations have realized that they no longer own an employee from 9 to 5 anymore. They always had this belief when you came to work, you were theirs. You couldn't use your mobile phone, couldn't do any personal stuff while you were at work. Sort of. But they've now realised that they only own chunks of you, and they need to understand that you've got other responsibilities, childcare, etc., etc. So if you want to make this person feel special, feel loved, and feel that sense of belonging in the organisation, you need to allow them to perform their other tasks, their family tasks, the home admin tasks. And one of the struggles at the moment is women tend to be disproportionately affected by these home admin, the family administrator type roles. And I'm not being sexist or stereotypical here. There are more female single parents than male single parents. Yes, there are very enlightened 21st century family units where childcare and education is supported. Absolutely fantastic, but proportionately more women are impacted by this. So I think what organizations have got to realize is we've set back gender equality many years by putting pressure on women in their home environment. And organizations have got to think about how they reintegrate and re-support women in a different way in the future. How we can, otherwise, a lot of women have put their career on hold for 2 years during this. How do we fast track them? How do we make sure that they haven't been disadvantaged while often men are allowed to just carry on and do their thing? And I think there's a whole lot of other challenges with COVID. There's financial implications to families where one of the partners or one of the people in the family has lost their job. They maybe were on commission or bonus on sales and they've lost their maybe they're in hospitality or entertainment and those industries are shut down completely. So we can't assume that everybody has the same challenges. And this is the saying is we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. So we've got to be when we're engaging with our teams, we've got to be very person centric and show real interest. How is it for you? And not just ship out a PC, ship out a phone and say, get on with it. Because I still see people on Zoom calls, on training sessions, on their sofa, crammed on the end of the kitchen table. And these aren't sustainable working environments for people. They've come out of big offices with ergonomics and furniture and desks, and we spent all this time making sure that the angles of their furniture and the keyboards are in the right place and the monitors are the right height. And now we're scrunching people up into their bedroom with a laptop. So I think employees need to take more responsibility to ensure that the home environment is suitable. And if that means investing in the teams, I think that's important. And of course, I know there are lots of companies out there that have given everybody a budgetary allowance to make sure their home environment is great. But there are still many organizations that just push the stuff out or courier it to home and say, get on with it. You need to be at work in the morning. So there is a variable experience between great companies and not so great companies. I think organizations maybe listen to this, think about what sort of organization are we? Are we a great company? Do we want to be a great company, or are we just trying to do this as cheap as we can? And of course, we've got in the UK and most of Europe at the moment, and certainly in America, there's challenges around this second lockdown, this second wave of virus, vaccines coming, yes. But at some point, we've got to make a decision about what's our future environment. And already organizations are talking about whether we go completely work from home, we go hybrid, or we want to drag people back into the office as soon as possible. So there's going to be another inequality of experience. Some people who maybe still have challenges with home ed, children, partners, working environment, or even from a safety point of view, they don't feel safe traveling on public transport this year. That they may well not want to readapt to a communal working environment. They're quite comfortable with home. Or we've got people that are so desperate to get out of their home environment that they really can't wait to get back to us. We've got these inequalities of experience that organizations are going to have to manage. And we've been in this for 18 months. We've onboarded a huge amount of people globally into organizations where they've never met each other. They've never been to the office. So again, we're going to have all of this first day, like a new person going to school for the first day, feeling their new office. And of course, the offices have changed. We've got social distancing, we've got screens, we've got hand sanitizers, we've got different ways of working. The trains are different. The concessions on the station where you buy your coffee are different. So the actual going to work experience will never be as it was. So everybody's going to have this stranger. So how do we bring people through these anxieties? Think about their well-being. Think about the impact on their mental health, where we're trying to drag people to get together. So I think those are the challenges: is recognizing the inequalities that women are facing predominantly, and the amount is set back gender equality in the workplace by generations almost. Then the impact of bringing people back together, and the trauma that people experience, the anxieties and the mental health impacts. So just being able to open it up again doesn't solve the issue. So I think there's those things to consider. So so I would like to think the great companies, the great leaders are already thinking about this. They're already starting to plan this, their workforce planning and management. These are the key issues they're going to be starting thinking about around well-being and employee experience.
Right, absolutely. So you're saying there's no one size fits all, and leaders should really acknowledge the fact that every employee's experiences are unique, they're different, and be empathetic to each one's needs and concerns.
Yeah, for sure. Ask, communicate, listen. Yeah, listening more than anything. Ask the questions and invite those conversations in a very non-judgmental, very open way. Because can I trust my anxieties, my fears with you? I need to know you're going to do something good with this. So I've spoken to many people who are scared for their jobs. We're in a situation now where the tide has turned. A year ago, 18 months ago, there was a global talent shortage. Now we've got an excess of talent, and people are worried about their jobs. So what we don't want to do is we don't want employees to turn to bullies or being complacent. Well, if you don't want it, I can get somebody else. There's hundreds of people applying for every job I post. I can have the pick. So what we don't want to do is end up employers treating people as commodities. We want employers to see people as individuals and to make sure you respect somebody individually. So being very person-centric and really getting to understand them. And that may seem a lot of effort, and people go, "Oh, we can't do that. There's too many people." Well, I'd say you have to. I think you have to really be person-centric and understand the needs of individuals and evolve your workforce to meet those needs.
Wow, that was so well put by you, Joanne. It's all about the human touch and the interpersonal connect. Can't agree more with you. And absolutely, leaders need to foster a psychologically safe environment for their diverse workforce. So, thoroughly agree with you on that one too. Thank you for encapsulating it so beautifully. Loved listening to you. So, going on to the next question, Joanne. I'd like to know your views on whether workspaces are really beginning to challenge biases. And this can even be sort of unconscious or subconscious bias while recruiting and in other processes as well. And so can you just shed some insight based on your experience also with the LGBTQI community?
Yeah, I often hear organizations talking about removing unconscious bias or stamping it out, and I think you have the first rule of unconscious bias is you have to acknowledge it's unconscious, it's subconscious. You can never remove it. Biases are there to keep us alive. Not all biases are bad, not all biases are good. So what we have to acknowledge is that biases exist. I think that's the first step. Biases exist. Many of them are without consciousness, so unconscious bias. And I think what we could do then is focus on the mitigation. What can we do to minimize the impact of a negative bias, either in the recruitment process, in the employee development process, the engagement process, opportunities in product development, whatever that may be. And that's the challenge that organizations need to face first. Don't remove biases, understand them, mitigate them, put processes in, and checks and balances. So I think a number of organizations are now realizing that unconscious bias training takes you so far. It makes you aware that biases exist, but it's learning about how to avoid them. So I think teaching people how to think differently is probably the key, to be able to open to be challenged, to openly discuss scenarios with each other, get different opinions, be open as an individual to be wrong, because often we want to be right. I know best. I've got 30 years experience. I know what I'm doing. But just be open to the fact that every day is a new day. Every day is a school day. I can learn something today. Reframe situations. Start with a yes. What would it look like if we tried this? How often do we go, oh no, we can't do that. No, we've never done that. It won't work. Well, how about what would it look like if it did work? So again, we're trying to remove these biases, and often biases can manifest themselves as entrenched views, entrenched opinions. We've always done it this way, this familiarity, this structure we've got. So COVID's taught us one thing. 18 months ago, we can't work from home. There's no way we can have people working from home. There's no way our organization would work. There's too many security concerns. We can't trust our people. And suddenly, click. Everybody's now working from home. Everyone's working remotely. All these barriers have been put up, have now stopped. And we look at that within not just in organizations, but in our countries, in our societies. Things that we thought would never be changeable have suddenly catalyzed and changed very quickly. So I'd like to think organizations will learn by the yes we can that has happened, and almost look at their processes, their procedures, their structure, and be much more agile and adaptable. Okay, that means that some businesses may question their viability. They may question the jobs that they're currently using, the people they're currently using, and say, actually, in the future, we're going to have to adapt to be different. So I think there is going to be a huge shake-up. And we already knew that the world of work was going to be different by 2030 anyway. We knew that 80% of the jobs that will exist in 8 years' time, 9 years' time, aren't currently invented. In the same way the iPhone, Amazon, Uber, all these companies didn't exist 10, 12 years ago. We've created these new giants and ways of working. And that change is going to be incredible. So I think what we need to do is, when we're building this new world, we need to think about our biases. We need to think inclusive by default. Think about who isn't included, who can't access the technology. We don't want to create a two-tier society, those that are technically able and digitally enabled and those who aren't, or we create an ageism gap, or we create an education gap. We end up discriminating against people from minority communities who don't have access to the same sort of technology or finances or support. So we've got to be really careful we don't create this new divide. And I'm also seeing new biases developing. People are questioning what their background looks like on Zoom, whether someone's kitchen or whether their dining room or their garden is good enough. People are worried about how they look, how they sound. And you're judging somebody maybe on the quality of their microphone, or the quality of their wallpaper, or the quality of their kitchen utensils. So I think we've got to be careful we're not introducing new biases and rooting those out. And I've seen a big shift where we're talking about video interviews. We're talking about maybe pre-recorded, or we're doing different things. And again, what we're doing is we're judging people by a different set of metrics, which again introduces new bias. And I've been talking to some people who develop recruitment platforms, ATS, or other onboarding systems, where they're doing video interviews or things like this. And I say, well, are you judging someone who submits a video differently to someone who doesn't submit a video? So they're being very, very progressively minded, saying if someone wants to submit a video, that's fantastic. That's another way of applying. So if they have a disability, they can't write, they can't type, or they feel more comfortable talking, that's great. But humans love speaking and they love seeing people, and it's very powerful to generate a new bias from the screen. So we need to see whether we're going to develop new biases by saying, actually, out of all the people that applied, white people who applied by video got hired more than black people who applied by video, who got hired more than people who didn't submit a video in the first place. Because, you know, I'm aware of my own particular characteristic. I'm aware that my voice isn't necessarily congruent with my appearance, and my appearance isn't necessarily the same as other women. So I'm aware that when the people first meet me, they may form an opinion on my voice, or they may form an opinion on how I look. So that's another bias. So I'm extremely worried sometimes that first contact, that first touch point when I meet you, is going to be a rejection. But if I'm doing that on video, am I going to get the same issue? Am I going to get rejected just by submitting it? And someone's going, oh, that voice sounds a bit funny. So I'm passionate when I'm talking to organisations about their inclusive recruitment strategy. And I really don't like the word diversity hiring. I think it misses the mark. I prefer representation and amplification, and how aren't we represented in our society? Because as soon as we talk diversity, we suddenly think about black people, we think about Asian people, we think about women, we think about gay people. Actually, there are many organisations that have lots of women in medical professions, in some accounting professions, in some. What we actually need is we need to be more represented by men in certain organisations. Maybe by white men in certain situations. There are certain places I know in London where there are no white people employed by those organisations, yet they still have white customers. So what you need to think is making sure there's representation to meet the needs of your customers. So one thing you can do is drop the word diversity hiring and hire underrepresented people who you want to make sure you have more representation of in your organisation, and inclusive hiring to make sure everybody feels they have a chance to succeed. But that's one of my bugbears. So I was going back to the concept is people want this quick fix. Let's hire more black people, let's hire more women, let's hire this, and that's the fix. That isn't the fix. Should be the seventh or eighth thing in the chain. The first thing is getting the culture, getting the hiring managers trained, making sure that people in the organisation are open to whoever walks in the door, and everybody who comes in has a fair chance to thrive and succeed on their own merits. Because I think a lot of these diversity hiring initiatives, it's just a numbers game. We're just trying to get people in, and we look at the stats of people walking out the back door. They come straight in. Oh, this place is horrible. This place is toxic. I'm off. So the organisations aren't fixing that experience. So it's all very well overcoming biases, putting processes in place, anonymizing CVs. But at some point, you've got to meet me. At some point, you've got to hire me, and at some point, you've got to look after me. So unless you can look after me, unless you can meet me, don't make it easy for me to apply. Just tell me up front, actually, Joe, we're a horrible place to work. You're not going to like it here, so don't bother. And I'll go, thank you for telling me. I won't waste my time with you. I'll focus on the people that are great places to work. And so I can't remember when we started this conversation. It was around biases, and it was around how we can mitigate it. So I think it's culture is still the important thing. Recognizing that biases exist, recognizing that we're not going to get rid of them, but it's putting the checks and balances in place. It's putting the process in place where we can mitigate, catch them, cross-check, be objective, get used to being challenged and challenge others and say, why are we doing that? Why do we think that? And that creates a very open culture where we can sit down and review decisions, making sure we've got voices around the table from people who aren't represented. So if we don't have someone who has a disability around our table, somebody around that table should say, hang on a minute, we need to think about disability inclusion, wheelchair access. What about if someone hasn't got dexterity in their hands, they can't access the touch key screen? Or what if the button's too high, they can't access it without a PA or a carer? So we often make assumptions about people's different characteristics, but we need to have someone who is maybe expert, advocate, someone who can amplify that voice if that person's not in the room, and raise that flag and say, well, we need to think about how that impacts somebody with a physical disability, or what's the impact on someone who is LGBT when we open an office in Saudi Arabia. How's that going to impact? Are we going to be denying people opportunity because they can't travel safely in and out of that country? What about if we're hiring a woman into an organisation that's heavily male biased, or into certain cultures where females aren't respected? I'm not saying we should deny people those opportunities, but we need to think about the impact of putting someone into that zone where it's not safe. How can we support them and make sure they succeed? So this is not just about bias. I think people focus so much on unconscious bias without putting the tools and the culture and the environment in place where biases are called out, but also the people are allowed to succeed more than anything.
Wow, that was lovely. And that was such a fresh perspective when you said we should not have diverse hiring, rather we should have hiring by representation. That was a really fresh insight to provide us, Joanne. And I really second everything that you said on how we need to make employees have a sense of belonging with their work and be passionate towards what they're doing. Yes, so great. I mean, it's really, in my opinion, it's really essential to have a non-judgmental attitude and just accept people with all their differences and, just empower them the way they are. So great, Joanne.
I just think language it takes a big part of this, because when we talk about diverse hires, diversity hiring, it often almost implies to the privileged or the incumbent that a diverse hire is second choice, because the obvious choice must be a white man. Therefore, if we're hiring for diversity, we're denying white men opportunity. Therefore, that's not fair. So I think we've got to call out the BS of meritocracy, where we're saying that our traditional structure must be better because it has succeeded for so long. So I think when we talk about diversity hiring, it almost implies second best. And what we need to say is, actually, it's not second best, it's best choice, because we rewrite the job descriptions, we rewrite the requirements so that cultural enrichment, empathy, EQ, all these things are rated as high as time served. We look at returning parents, often women, often mothers, and the lived experience they've had raising families, juggling priorities, financial management, training, education, all the skills that you learn as a parent, valuing these things beyond a university degree that you got when you were 18 or 19. So I think we need to look at potential and capability and adaptability more than just time served, and rejig what we mean by the merit, whether that's in the hiring process or in the promotion process or in appraisals, and cut out the favoritism in internal hiring. Everybody has to apply. There's no second in line automatic promotion. Number one leaves, number two gets the job. Number two should expect to have to compete with number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as well, because often number 9 has got passion and drive and can jump to the head of the queue. So yeah, too often as not, we end up queuing people up for promotion. And what we need to do is level that playing field and say everybody should be able to apply for this role. So that's when we start truly making great change in organizations, where we're not pipelining people, because often the pipeline at the moment is non-diverse, for want of a better way of putting it. It's propagating the monoculture.
Wow, that was great. What a wonderful response, Joanne. I mean, I'm blown right now. Thank you so much. So just to kind of wrap this interview up, do you have anything you'd like to leave our audience with? Just a passing remark, or I can surely close this interview up?
I think the key thing is to be person-centric. And the golden rule, as people say it, is treat people as you want to be treated. But we need to throw the golden rule away and go for the platinum rule, which is treat people as they want to be treated. And that means understanding someone's lived experience, understanding someone's culture. You see their color, you see their race, you see their faith, you see their sexuality, and you celebrate them because of that, because you know that they are authentic, enriched, and capable people. and you don't force them to hide those characteristics to fit into your world. So you add them to your culture and you expand your culture and enrich it.
Wow, lovely. I literally have goosebumps right now. Thank you so, so much, Joanne. It was an honor talking to you today. I gained loads of wonderful, fresh insights from you. And I'm really hoping to do like a second version of this sometime in the near future. Can't get enough in just a single interview. Thank you so much.
No, please do. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great having a conversation with you. And it's a fantastic opportunity to talk to your viewers and listeners. And no, I'd love to follow up. And if anybody out there is listening wants to catch up with me, then track me down on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll put the details at the end of the video, and you'll share those. So please, I'm always open to talk to people and share ideas.
Will do. And likewise, Joanne, thank you so much for taking out the time to share your views with us. And have a great day and a healthy time ahead of you. We should surely stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye bye.